Have you ever heard the story of a prison break where the prisoners don't actually try to leave? Well, 2,000 years ago, Paul and Silas ended up in Philippi in Lydia's house. One day, they went out for a walk. And as they were going on a walk, they encountered this woman who had a spirit inside of her. Now, she had this innate ability to be able to predict the future. Just pause for a second. Imagine how much money she could have made, how famous she could have been. Well, she ended up following Paul and Silas for a few days. And not just that, she harassed them quite a bit, so much that Paul lost his temper. He lost his temper and he tells the spirit to leave her, and it leaves. And suddenly she loses the ability to predict the future. Now, because she was a slave, her masters weren't too happy because their cash flow is now burned and their business is crashing and burning. In an act of revenge, they grab Paul and Silas and they end up having these two dudes imprisoned. Not just that, they're beaten and they end up in the most secure part of a prison. The crazy part of the story is Paul and Silas don't actually lose hope. They actually praise God in prison to the point that the other prisoners actually hear them. All night they praise God, they sing, they talk of God, and in the middle of the night, an earthquake takes place. The chains are loose, and now the doors of the prison are completely open, and they have the ability to just walk out with no consequence. Now, if that was me, I would have walked out and never looked back. But Paul and Silas, they stayed in prison. The jailer walks in and he realizes the doors are open, but it's dark. He thinks all the prisoners have left, naturally. He draws his sword to take his own life because of his failures. But he hears a voice. Paul says, "Don't harm yourself. We are all here." The jailer suddenly just gets moved by the actions of Paul and Silas that he actually says, "Sirs, what must I do to be saved?" And not just that, the story actually concludes in even better. He actually washes the wounds of Paul and Silas. And on top of that, him and his entire family become baptized. All because Paul and Silas chose to speak truth. And not just that, they stayed in prison when they didn't really do anything wrong.